So, Niall, let me just ask you. I asked you before. Now we've seen what he said. I'll ask you after. What did you think of the way they spun it? Because it was, yay, we're happy, but the work's not done, and we're not taking any questions.
So I think that they made the only case that they could make, which was, obviously, this is good news about Brittney Griner, and we are committed to trying to get the release of Paul Whelan. They essentially have to say that. But there is a very important question, I think, left unanswered by the president's remarks. And that is, he mentioned, as you've just alluded to, Mitch, this idea that Russia is treating this case differently. And he said that this was not a case where his administration, the Biden administration, had made a choice of who to bring home. That's all very well. But the fact is, in releasing Viktor Bout, the White House has given up a very big bargaining chip to get Brittney Griner home, and everyone's happy that she's on her way home. But where it now is the leverage to secure Paul Whelan's release, I think that's going to be a question that a lot of people are asking, and those remarks didn't provide the answer to it.
Well, we also don't quite know who is in custody here in the United States that is Russian, that the Russians might be interested in. We knew about Viktor Bout, but Trevor Reed was exchanged for Konstantin Yaroshenko, who was a Russian pilot. He was convicted of drug trafficking, and he was being held in Connecticut on a 20-year sentence. And I don't think anyone had heard the name Konstantin Yaroshenko before. He was released in exchange for a former U.S. Marine and Trevor Reed. So I kind of want, everybody knows who Brittney Griner is in this country, right? Especially now. But who else could we exchange? Do we have any idea? Or there's not some prison roster of what Russians we're holding right now. So it would seem tough to know exactly what the bargaining chips are that the United States has. We're going to toss it to Tom now. Tom, you just you're there at the White House. What are you seeing? What are you hearing now?
Well, yeah, the president just spoke, minutes ago. It's tough not to feel that. I think the key word following all this is just sort of incomplete. I think both the president and Brittney Griner's wife sort of touched up on, it's certainly very good news when we're talking about, an American being held at a penal colony in Russia on drug charges. And that case got obviously worldwide attention. The president saying, welcome home, Brittney. She will be back here in the U.S. Coming up soon. But, again, for months, they considered Brittney Griner wrongfully detained. With all this. And there was all sorts of pressure on the president to get this done. So you saw, President Biden's, at least at the beginning, sort of a joyous atmosphere with this, bringing her home. But again, incomplete, that feeling that, people like Paul Whelan are still being held in Russian custody right now. And the president noting that, Russia is treating that case differently. Obviously, Paul Whelan being held on espionage charges that his family have called baseless in the past. And that the president's saying that they're not giving up, that they are going to continue trying to negotiate to get Paul Whelan home. But again, there's sort of that feeling of just that incomplete feeling of, yes, certainly great news that Griner is coming home after lots of pressure and lots of calls to bring her back to safety. But there's still lots of work left to be done. We're talking about Paul Whelan, who's been behind bars and in Russian detention since 2018. Last week, we reported on his family having a phone call with Whelan, how he was transferred to a prison hospital. We're still waiting for updates on what exactly his condition and why he was treated there. But, there's still lots of work left to be done. And I think the big takeaway from here, from the White House is going to be what sort of, reaction does this get? It's from, people on Congress and lawmakers that, was this a fair trade is going to be a very big question. Again, earlier this morning I was talking about Viktor Bout, nicknamed the Merchant of Death, a 25-year federal prison sentence he was behind bars on, accused of, smuggling weapons, tens of millions of dollars in weapons to be used against the United States military and soldiers serving the United States. So, was this a fair trade? The president will definitely be facing that question in the days to come following all this. And again, sort of, yes, there's a celebratory mood here at the White House. We know Brittney Griner's wife was in the Oval Office when the president spoke to Brittney Griner earlier this morning, and saying that she was in good spirits during that. And saying that Brittney Griner, represents the best in America. But again, a big sort of fallout from this is going to be sort of, was it worth it to trade a WNBA star for this, former Soviet Army lieutenant who has been accused of pretty big crimes of selling, arms to, smuggling weapons to be used against the American military, and then sort of, what happens next, and what about Paul Whelan? Those are going to be some very big questions following all this, and it's going to be interesting to see sort of the reaction from the White House. Do they keep playing up this Griner release, or do they keep, the attention on Paul Whelan and trying to get more Americans home that they may believe are wrongfully detained, guys?
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.